What is your full name?
My name is Angela LaShawn Howell.
And do you know why you were given that name?
No, but I hate it. Angela LaShawn La.
And where were you born and raised?
I was born in Kewanee, Illinois, raised in Kewanee, Illinois.
And can you tell me a description of how the place looked?
Yes, Kewanee is a very small town. Population at the time when I was growing up there, like 10,000 people. Everybody know everybody. The majority is white.
And what is the first memory of your life?
The first memory of my life, I could see lights. And they would be ambulance and police lights. And it come to find later in life, those lights at the time I was 3 years old, they were my grandfather. He had owned some property across the street. And the woman had came over and said that there was a flood in her basement. So he went over to find out what's going on with the flood. And he was putting on his boots, but didn't have one of his boots on all the way. So when he got into the basement, he was electrocuted and he had died.
And why do you think you have that memory?
Because there was always trauma and violence throughout my whole life. So pretty much it's always been polices and ambulances, me growing up. So that's why I see those lights all the time.
And you mentioned trauma. How has trauma affected you?
Well, as a young child, I see my mother, get abused, by her different boyfriends. I've seen my auntie. We lived in a house with 13 people, and my grandmother was the owner of the house. But my mother and her boyfriend and my aunties and their boyfriends and my uncles and their girlfriends, they would all stay in the house with the kids. And they were all abusive. Like, all the men were abusive towards the women. And, I see my mother get abused, police constantly coming out to the house. My aunties, police constantly coming out. So, that's how it was, trauma, just growing up. Polices were always at the house every weekend because somebody either got stabbed, somebody had got, hit upside the head with a statue, somebody had got punched. It was just drama.
Have you ever experienced anything within relationships?
Oh, yes. When I was, I was about 20 years old. And, I was already familiar with Peoria. And we had went out to the club, and I had met this guy. His name was Melvin. And, Melvin, at the time when I met him, he seemed like he was a pretty nice guy. And he would, he seemed like he was pretty gentle or whatever. So we exchanged numbers, and we started dating. And at the time, I had my own place in Kewanee. So he would drive from Peoria to Kewanee. And I just felt like, I was special because this guy was driving long distance to come and see me, And then come to find out, he was very jealous. And that relationship, he ended up being very, very abusive. Like one particular time, he didn't work. And so he would, I would put money in his pocket just so that he could be the man paying for everything, but really it was my money that he had paid for everything with. And one particular time we had went to the club, and I had put money in his pocket. And when we got inside the club, we met our friends at the table, and he ordered everybody a drink, and except for me. And then that's when I spoke up and I said, "Hey, I wanted a drink." And he said, "Bitch, shut the fuck up." So I just knew then that I needed to shut up because he was going to start a big mess in the club. So I didn't say anything else. And then the song came on, and he was dancing like, "Hey, that's my song," and he tried to pull me out on the floor. And I you could tell that I really wasn't interested. And so the money that I had gave him, he threw the money on the floor in the middle of the dance floor and stepped on it and said, "Bitch, you think this shit means anything to me?" And he just stepped on it. And the guy that was dancing on the floor seen him throw the money down, so he picked it up. So then he looked at me and he told me, "Bitch, get the fuck out of here and go out to the car," So I just went on out to the car, it was 6 feet of snow. I went out there and I just sat in the car, freezing, waiting on him to come out. The club closed about 2:30, 3 in the morning. And that club, they cook like fried chicken and stuff after the club, so you could order a plate or whatever. So he had ordered him a plate, and then when he came out to the car, he went to hand me the plate while he get in the car. So I took the plate and I pushed it all over him. And he didn't say anything to me, So I already knew that something was up. I knew that he was going to do something to me because he was just too quiet. So then when we got to the house, I was getting out the car. He had got out the car, came on my side, and then he just socked me right in the face. And all I could see was stars, and I was dizzy, and, he just hit me with all his might. And I was just, my head was, I could hear a ring in my head, it was just that hard. So he told me, he was like, "Bitch, since you wasted my food, you gonna make me something to eat." And the only thing that I can think was to just do something to his food. I was just going to, poison his food, do something to it. But then I had thought about it. I'm like, I got kids. I can't do that. I have kids. I don't want to be in jail. So, when he fell asleep eventually, I just got in the car and I went ahead and drove myself to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, the nurses, from the way that I looked, they could tell that something was going on, that, I had been abused or something. And they said, they had gave me something for pain. And they was like, "Well, man, we can't send you home, by yourself. Do you have somebody that can come and get you, And so the next thing I know, I look up, and there he was. And he said, I'll go ahead and take her home. And they was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, he can take me home." But they pretty much knew that it was just something about him, but they went ahead and let me leave with him. But in my mind, I'm like, I have to leave him. I just can't stand this relationship. So, I went on and went back home with him, but I just knew that I was going to have to leave him.
And what made you want to leave him? How did you get out of that relationship?
I just kept going back to him. I went back to him that point, and then at that time, and then, one particular time, he used to come to my job, and he know when I get paid, on Fridays. So he used to come to my job, and he used to, request that I give him money. And because I didn't want him to make a scene, and where I worked at, so I went ahead and just gave him, the money just so he could leave. And one particular time, he had picked me up on a Friday. And, he had my kids with him, and, my kids, I had gave them their allowance and everything, and they had a new purse, and, they were so proud of their little new purse and their little allowance. And this guy that I knew and that he knew, the guy just so happened to wave, and, I waved back, and he backslapped me, and he was like, "BITCH, you better not ever speak to another man while you in the car with me." And so my kids started crying and crying because they were scared, and he grabbed their purses and he threw them out the window and told them to shut the F up, and so I'm just thinking, like, I really need to get away from this guy. And so we were running out of gas, and so he had finally went to stop at the gas station, and the name of the gas station was Freedom. And I said to myself, this is my opportunity right now to leave him. Because he had paid for the gas, and he went in the store, and he was in there just scratching off lottery tickets. And we're sitting in the car, and I said, I should leave him. And I said it out loud. And my daughter said, at the time she was 5 years old, she said, "Mom, just follow your heart." So I really listened to her, and I got over there to the driver's seat, and I took off, and I left him at that gas station with the intentions of never going back to him. So I drove to Kiwani, which was 45 minutes away. I went to Kiwani over my grandmother's house. So when I got there, he called and said, bitch, I got a surprise for you when you get home. And so I had that Monday off, so I stayed there all the way through Monday. So then when we go back home, my kids, they got out the car, they went up to the door, and they come running back. Mom, the door is open, the door is wide open. So I said, well, we're not going to go in the house. We're going to go ahead and call the police first before we go up in the house. So we went ahead and called the police, and when I went up in the house, he had sliced up my couches. He poured bleach on my kids' clothes. He poured bleach on my clothes. He, just spit in my coffee pot. He really destroyed the apartment just completely, and our things, And so at that point, the police had told us that we could go to a woman's shelter. And we stayed in a woman's shelter, and, we stayed there for about 3 months. And this woman's shelter, my kids loved it because they felt that they were safe. There were other women that were going through abusive relationships, and we would have meetings, and they would share their struggles of going through domestic violence, and we would talk about how the different times we tried to get away and how different guys treated us. And, they would also provide, transportation for me to get to and from work. So eventually I had built up the courage to go back home. And when I would go home, the guy that was abusing me, he would stalk me, He would be hiding around the building, whispering at me, And so one particular time, this happened, the first week I had went home, I had went outside, and my tires on my car were flattened. So then I get it fixed. The next day the tires were flattened again, and I get it fixed. And finally I had, called the police station, and I said, this guy is threatening me, and, I have an order of protection against him. He's flattening my tires. And the woman said, well, how do you know it's him? I said, well, I know it's him. They said, well, do you see him doing it? And I said, no. And they said, well, you have to actually see him flattening your tires before we could do anything. And I said, well, what if I came up dead? Then what would you do? She said, well, we would have your dead body then. And, so then I knew that, not even the police can really help me, get out of the situation. I just have to make up my mind that I was just going to leave him. I had to build up some courage. And God said, fear no man. So I just had to build up some courage and just say, hey, I am not scared of you. And one particular time, he was actually chasing me in my car. He was running down the car, and so I turned that car around, and I started chasing him with the car. And I was running up on the curves and on the grass, trying to literally run him over because I was sick and tired of his shit. And that's when I knew that I was done. I was totally done with him.
Did you ever think that your kid's life was in danger for a second?
Yes. It's when you're going through domestic violence, it's like, the whole situation is scary. But you're not really thinking clearly. It's like I knew my kids were life was endangered. I knew my life was endangered. But it was like I was not thinking clearly. And the reason why I always took this guy back was because I just felt sorry for him. I just thought about him. I thought, if I leave him, then he's going to be homeless. He's not going to have anywhere to go. How is he going to eat? I was thinking of him. And I wasn't thinking about me. I wasn't thinking about my children. So, and I did know that they were in danger. It was so bad that I had called the police so much on him, from him abusing me, that the police told me, one point that if I call them again and I take him back, then they're not going to show up. They're just not going to show up because I take them back every time. And so then even my kids had got into the routine where if they knew he had got me in that room and he was yelling at me and screaming at me, that was a hint for them to sneak out the house and go to the neighbors and call the police. So, I pretty much knew that my kids were in danger, but I just was not thinking clear. And to this day, it really bothers me to know that I was not paying attention to my children at the time that I was going through that abuse.
Were you a single parent when this happened?
Oh yes, I was always a single, parent during this time. Even though I was going through, abuse, I always been the one that was pretty much responsible, and I was like a go-getter, and I was considered like a good girl, Everybody knew that I wasn't like all the other Hows that was on drugs and, alcohol and, that I really was trying to better myself. But, with dealing with this man that was in abuse, it was like he was like tearing me down. And so I knew that I had to continue my, struggle of raising my children and trying to give and be the best mom that I can be. One day, I had went ahead and I just was late to work. But then when I got to work, I said to myself, I need to write this poem, and it's called Single Mother Struggle. I'm faced with emotional distraught. Today is one of the days that I feel lost, making sure everything's in place, trying to keep a smile on my baby's face. Every day, there's something new. Sometimes I wonder, what can I do? Especially when the bills come due. Boy, I tell you, it's always something new. Single mother struggle. It's a hard fight, making sure the children are warm through the night. Single mother struggle. It just doesn't seem fair. Rushing through meals and combing their hair. Boy, I tell you, it's a big scare. Single mother struggle. What an emotional cost. Without the comfort of daddy's hands, the children feel lost, asking questions of wonder if he even cares. I just wish that I had been prepared. Single mother struggle. My advice to you, be prepared is what you should do, because it will happen when you least expect. Now I'm telling you to have self-respect. It's your heart and the children's that you will protect. Don't get me wrong. I love my kids. If I had the choice, I'd do it again. But this time will be better than before, because being a single mother is a tug of war. Single mothers struggle.
Wow. What advice would you give single mothers that went through domestic violence?
I would tell, these mothers that, it's never too, when you, they call it the cycle of violence. So when you're in this relationship, basically, you're not even thinking about you. You're not thinking about your children. You're really just thinking about him, because you feel sorry for him, because you go back to him is the reason why you're feeling sorry for him. But you have to think about you. You have to think about that this is not right for him to put his hands on you. You have to think about, just because that last hit that he did when he hit you, it may not hurt you that time. It may have not have killed you. It hurt you, but you didn't die from it. But that next hit is no guarantee that you're going to live, because it just might, you may not come out of it. So you have to think about you and your children and get out of it while you can. Just let go and live on, because it's never too late to get into a relationship like I did it. You know, when I stopped feeling sorry for this man, and I really didn't have no fear in my heart for this man, and I let him go, then I was able to open up my heart to another relationship. And this man, he respects me. You know, he loves me with all his heart. I'm happily married. You know, my children, they're in college, you know, going for their master's program. Just through me, looking at me, if you let go, then it's possible for love again.